Well, hi, Robert. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy out there in Malibu, California.
It's an honor and pleasure to be here, Catherine.
Thank you. I was following you on Facebook and I'm like, wow, who is this guy? And I loved it that that you're Robert, that's Rad, your last name Radnoti, but Robert is rad. I love that. Because you are. And I love your mindset, your hypnotherapy, and how you show up in service to the world. And I thought, gee, I wonder if somebody like him would be willing to do a video to share with others, and if you would be willing to talk with the ladies and I today. And I just sent you a message. I'm like, hey, doesn't hurt to ask. I'll just ask. And you said yes.
For
So
sure.
I'm just thrilled. So we were talking earlier about the journey, and I think Joe Dispenza calls it getting across the river, which is interesting because I always say it's like a bridge of when you've gone through a lot and you've decided, this isn't how I want to live anymore. And you make that first decision, which I think is the first step on the bridge. And there's all these things you have to go through on this bridge. And so many survivors don't make it over the bridge. And so these videos are about trying to empower them and support them and maybe give them resources and tools and things to think about that might help them get over that bridge from surviving to thriving. So thanks so much for being willing to have this conversation with me. Would you tell us a little bit about how you personally got started in self-development?
Well, I've got an interesting journey. I was a chemical engineer for many years, worked for Exxon. And, probably people think of Exxon as a big, bad oil company, but it's actually really, really a great company for employees. There's a lot of personal development that goes on within the company. And my very first event that I went to was within Exxon. It was called Investment in Excellence. And a guy named Lou Tice out of Seattle taught this course. And it was just fascinating to me. Their process was around affirmations and creating very powerful affirmations, but not simple ones like we might know, like just declarative ones like I am love, I am courage, I am powerful. He had a process where it was 3 steps, and the 3 steps were because I do something, so that's like a choice, like you were talking about, this is accomplished and that makes me feel. And what I learned through that process is that all change happens because of a feeling, and a feeling that you want or desire. And that's really driven a large part of my life, is to think about, what do I really want to feel like? Do I want to feel love or freedom or peace or joy or gratefulness? And then I've tied a lot of what I do to that feelings. And after I left Exxon, I became a track and field and cross country coach, first at a high school and then at a college. And I use that in my coaching there. And then, interestingly, I was at Pepperdine University, and we were minimally funded, no scholarships, but a Division I school, and competing against the UCLA, Oregon, big time schools. And I wanted to win really badly. And I came across hypnotherapy and going like, this would be kind of cool. I could hypnotize my athletes to get faster, and we could be more competitive. And then when I got into that, I just learned that it's not just for athletics, it's for everything, and so many different things. I think we've got a list of 146 what we call presenting issues that hypnotherapy is awesome for. And so I got involved with that, and I'm involved with the Tony Robbins world, Joe Dispenza world, Brendan Bouchard world. Now I've become kind of a leader in many of those organizations, and I just love it because I've got a growth mindset. And that's what, in thinking about your question about survivors, how to move forward, maybe some have a growth mindset, maybe some have a fixed mindset. There's a popular book around that, but developing that idea that you want to grow, that you want to survive, not just survive, but really thrive. And I like this word, thrival. Instead of survival, you want to thrival.
I love
And
that. Thrival.
that
That's
is,
the
that's what
next
I
t-shirt.
teach.
Thrival. You teach
Thrival.
thrival. I
Yep.
want that shirt.
Yeah.
Thrival.
Well, and you mentioned raditude, rad,
Yeah.
everything is rad for me. So I teach what I call raditude. So that's a radical attitude that you can accomplish anything in life. And my athletes used to call me Coach Rad. And I have a radpreneurship program and Live in Rad and Savvy Rad and Hypno Rad. And, it just is kind of catchy. And I have fun with it.
And that's the key thing, right? Is being able to have fun with it. So I want to back up to hypnotherapy, and it's just so interesting that it's today. I have a very good friend of mine in New York, and she is having her very first hypnotherapy session today.
Okay.
She has anxiety about flying. She's tried everything, and today is her day. And she's like, "Well, what do you think about hypnotherapy?" And I said, "Well, I'm a trained hypnotherapist. I don't practice, but I believe in it. I think it's just, amazing. And I love mindset." So you were talking initially about imagining how you want to feel, imagining the success. I don't know if that tool has been really clear to the survivors I work with about imagining, when they get through sort of these tough times of adjustment, of letting go of the old and embracing the new. And how cool to embrace the new. We talk about vision boards, we talk about goal setting, but you just took it to another level. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because one of the sort of affirmations or incantations that I learned about 5 years ago that's been really powerful for me, and I don't know if it fits here or not, but I'll just say it anyway. It's that life is always happening for you, not to you. And when horrific things happen for you, it's almost impossible, it seems, to believe that it's happening for you. And while I haven't been in a situation like the people that you work with, a few years ago, my dad committed suicide. And it was really, really challenging. It was a hard time. It was at the same time I was learning this concept of life is happening for you. And I said, there's no way in this situation could it be true. But then as time went on a little bit, one of the things that I learned was, as we grow up, we have families, we get involved with our own lives. We spend less and less time, unfortunately, or at least I did, with my parents. And that you live far away and you see each other, a few times each year, whatever, they come see the grandkids. But I wasn't close to them. And one of the things what happened when my dad committed suicide was, my mom was all alone and she didn't want to live. She pretty much wanted to check out herself. She calls it flipping over. And I spent a lot of time with her. I just left my job, essentially went home she lives in Phoenix, and spent the week with her, and then would fly home to go to meet her cross country race. And I had an assistant coach taking care of my athletes at that time. I spent a lot of time with her and we became really close. We became best friends. And while I would never, ever trade it did cause me to create the kind of relationship that now I'm proud of with my mom and should have had all along. And so it's one of many things that I've learned in this process of going from survival to thrival, is that everything is happening for you, not to you.
That's a trust thing, right, Robert? Like, you just, when you're in it, like when it's happening, you might not see what horrific things have happened to you
Yeah.
could possibly be good.
Yeah.
I think that there is, at least for me, there was space, there was time. And as time went on, I could look back and go, wow, that was really, the first 20 years of my life was horrific sexual abuse, sex trafficked, beaten, choked to unconsciousness, all these awful things that happened to me the first 20 years of my life, nearly 20 years of my life. And then the next 20 years is just all about dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, where I wanted to do what your mom talked about. I wanted to flip over, no karma, no hell, just like a karma-free check out, because it was just like walking through mud every day, trying to get through post-traumatic stress and night terrors and all that. And so now I'm, 50, be 57 here shortly. And I can look back and go, wow, I would not be who I am. I would not have educated as many people. I wouldn't have helped as many people. Like all the stuff that I've been able to, God has been able to accomplish through me as an instrument never would have happened if I hadn't gone through all of that. And if I had to do it all over again based on what I know today, I would. I would. But boy, I never would have thought I ever would have believed that,
Yeah.
Early on. And I think that's where faith and trust, when you're in it and you're going, I don't know if I don't know if I have what it takes to get through this. I don't know. I can't even imagine my life being different than the Jerry Springer show I've grown up with. How could this possibly be for me? Not, instead of to me, it feels to me. And I have this thing about power of pretending, where you just pretend. What if you just made up that I might not understand it now, but I'm going to pretend that there really is some fantastic reason why I had to go through that. And there's just something amazing that's going to happen to me later on.
Yeah. Well, the mind is a very, very powerful tool. In fact, I keep thinking the more I'm learning that the next frontier is the mind, not necessarily artificial intelligence, but the mind.
I agree.
And, the power of the mind, because the mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. And when you can, in through hypnotherapy, we do this often, is we create a vision and, help our clients see something that may not be true today, but help them rewire their mind, reprogram them so that they can move toward that and into this thrival, or as you called it, pretending mode, because it doesn't know the difference. You're right.
So one of the things that survivors can do is they can choose the thrival method, the power of pretending, and just make a choice. Make a choice that I'm going to believe that there was some great plan for everything that's happened to me, and I can and will move forward into creating the life that I would love to have.
Yeah.
Love to have.
One of the things I like to share, if it's okay with you, is what I call the theory of the mind. And I got my little flip chart here. So I'm going to draw a picture of your mind.
Yay.
Let's see if this shows up. Can you see that? Yeah. So let's say that's your mind. And
Okay.
when you're first born, only a small sliver of your mind has been developed. And essentially all it knows is fight or flight. Oftentimes people have heard that. But between about birth and about 8 years old, you develop your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Up until that point, literally all your experiences, all the things that happen to you get stored in your subconscious. So you have literally thousands of positive experiences and thousands of negative experiences. At about 8 years old, plus or minus a little bit, you develop what we call the critical mind or analytical mind, where you can now decide what's true and not true. So the best example as I have is like Santa Claus. So up to about 8 years old, you believe in Santa Claus. And then around 8 years old, something happens. Maybe a kid said something to you, your parents said something to you. And now I say, oh, can Santa Claus really fly around the world and drop down chimneys? He's kind of fat and bring presents to everyone. You go, I don't think that that's true any longer, because you've developed now a critical mind, and that critical mind helps decide what gets into your subconscious. And your subconscious determines how you respond to things in life, unfortunately. And what we found is the conscious mind, it's only about 12% of your mind. And there's some research that shows that it's as little as 5%, which means your subconscious mind is at least 88% of your mind. And mostly we don't know what's there. And good example, I have my family's from Hungary. We're Hungarian. And my parents came out during the revolution in 56. And every about 5 years or so, we would go home to see all the relatives. Growing up, my sister and I, we always wanted to have a dog. My dad would never let us have a dog. He just didn't like dogs, but he could never explain it. And we were home at a family reunion, and his sister, my aunt, had a bunch of dogs running around. And I said, well, what's the deal? We weren't allowed to have dogs. And she goes, well, I know why. And everyone kind of turned to her and said, well, why? She said, when your father was 5 years old, he was bitten by a dog. He had one of those negative experiences, but even when she said it, he didn't remember that. We have so many things in our subconscious that we just don't know, and they impact the way we show up in life. So even that move from thinking about survival to thrival, there's stuff in our subconscious that holds us back from that. And that's why I think hypnotherapy is so brilliant, because it allows us to move there. So all hypnosis is putting you in a state, or being in a state, where you're the most open to suggestions. And these are suggestions that serve you. And it's not by falling asleep or going into that dreamy place. It's actually by overwhelming your conscious mind so that it wants to escape, and it escapes into your subconscious, where we can strengthen a positive experience, lessen, weaken, or eliminate negative experience, or create a whole new experience, or pretend, because the mind doesn't know whether it's real or imagined. Mm-hmm. And so working with clients, just another tool can be is recognizing this and saying, it's not really my fault. A lot of cases that I was just programmed by parents, by teachers, by coaches. All this stuff is put into my subconscious that I have no control over up till 8 years old. And it needs to change, and it can change over time. And the pursuit of that is something that's kind of interesting to do. And as you know, it can be very, very powerful.
Absolutely. There's a book by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Right. The Surrender Experiment. I love him. So you have the little minus signs there, which is just interesting, because Michael talks about splinters. Everything, we have these splinters.
Uh-huh.
And after a while, we just sort of have this protection. And people who work with weight loss, people who are significantly overweight, as the therapist the food nutritionist will say, boy, as my client lost weight, boy, that's when stuff started really showing up, because that was their protection. It could be a lot of things. It could be food, it could be sex, it could be working out, it could be whatever it is that we try to have that block from all these little splinters so we don't get hurt.
Yep.
So, he talks about giving, when those unconscious, like the dog, when that sort of comes up, oh yeah, I remember. I don't know what you do when you don't remember, but I remember the dog. Okay, so I want to give myself space, Michael would say, to feel the terror of that dog biting me, and then healing it and sort of letting it go. Or as Ram Dass says, sort of see it, God rest his soul, see it on the box train and just say, thanks for sharing, just let it come, give it space and let it go.
Yep.
How would, if somebody doesn't have access to formal hypnotherapy, what are some tools that survivors can do, or how do they find a hypnotherapist? How do they afford a hypnotherapist? How can they take some of those subconscious things and do some of the stuff you were just telling us about?
Well, there's a few answers to questions in there.
Yeah.
One of which I want to make sure to touch on, the hypnotherapy school that I graduated from is called HMI, Hypnosis Meditation Institute in Tarzana, California. And I believe it's the only accredited hypnotherapy school in the world. Joe Dispenza graduated from there, Marissa Peer graduated from there, and Robert Radnoti graduated from there. But we have a kind of a pro bono program where anyone from the world can sign up for hypnotherapy and have up to 5 free sessions.
Wow,
It
cool.
is
Thank
a
you.
great, great resource. I will get you the link to that
Awesome.
that you can have. The other thing that I want to say is that you know, we often are in a state of hypnosis, not often, but we are several times during the day. And remember, hypnosis only means that you're the most open to suggestions. So when you first wake up in the morning and right before you go to sleep, you're in that theta brainwave frequency where you're the most open to suggestions. So when you wake up, that's why it's oftentimes a great time to set an intention for the day and or do gratitudes. Both of those things, and at the end of the day, are really powerful, because essentially what you can do is self-hypnotize yourself, which is just rewiring your mind.
Mhm.
And so it's the perfect time to do that. So even if it's hard because you're in thrival, you can think about, how do I really want to feel? What do I really want? Write them down on a piece of paper. And when you first wake up, just say them and put them into your subconscious. Now, we often find ourselves in a state of hypnosis a couple other times during the day. One is when we're driving, one is when we're watching a movie. And that's why advertisers take advantage of it. They'll have like a Michael J. Fox holding a Pepsi can or a Coke can, whichever one he holds in movies.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we find ourselves wanting to do that. But I
True.
find that right when you wake up and right before you go to sleep, we're most in control of that. And making declarative statements like, I am thriving, even in the face of evidence that says it's not true. So, that phrase, fake it till you make it, or your words, pretend that it's true, and just rewire your mind, because then you can create that within you. And then naturally, subconsciously, you start moving toward that. And actually, you turn on a magnetic field around you, and you turn on your reticular activating system part of your brain that will then recognize some things that come into your life, and you start noticing them and moving toward them and taking an active role in moving from survival to thrival.
I want to ask you about something. I love this. I'm just really enjoying this conversation so
Me
much.
too.
So, what the bleep do you know?
Mm-hmm.
One of the cool things about that, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, so I think it's important information. When there's a baby, there is a spider web of nerves, all just all over. They're all just there to be used. And a baby can learn many different languages through toddler. All these things are available to the baby. And as the baby starts growing up and starts maturing, the older we get, what happens with all of these different classrooms all over our brain is the ones that we don't use, they drop away. And it's kind of like a muscle that's not used. It's atrophy. It's just turned off. And these other ones that we use a lot are turned on. Just because we haven't been using them doesn't mean we can't turn them back on. And so when you're talking about rewiring the brain, you mean that pretty literally. So what people might not know is that their thoughts have become habitual based on some of these unconscious things that have happened that have sort of molded us. Don't touch the hot stove. Men who have that mustache are going to hit me, or whatever it is. For me, it was maybe a color and make of a car where I was assaulted. Every time that I would see that car as a grown-up, I would get triggered, or a Christmas wreath, I would get triggered. And I learned over time to not be triggered by those things anymore. And now I see it, I notice that I'm not triggered. And then this year, didn't even notice that I didn't notice, which is the healing process. So when you're talking about imagining, like in the morning, saying, what are the things that I really want to feel like today? I want to feel focused. I want to feel calm. I want to feel happy. I want to feel compelled to eat healthy and whatever. And then in the evening, I'm a big believer in the gratitude journal. What went right today? go to sleep with what went right today, but you really are rewiring your brain because you're turning on those parts of your brain that you weren't using that went dormant.
Mm-hmm.
Did I explain that okay? Can
Yes.
you do better, please? You know what I'm trying to
No,
say.
you're brilliant. But one of the things that reminded me is something that I call the consciousness exercise. And this might be something for the people listening to consider doing. And we don't really notice throughout the day that we have so many negative thoughts. And sometimes we say them, sometimes we just think them, and they just reside here. And so what I like to give my clients what I call the consciousness exercise, where for the next week, catch yourself saying something that doesn't serve you. And I don't actually like these negative things. I think of it as something that doesn't serve you, because you want to
Say that again. Catch yourself thinking, saying, doing something that doesn't serve you.
And as soon as you do that, train your mind to say stop, cancel. So you become conscious of it. And then use your creative, beautiful mind to restate it in a way that does serve you. And so as an example, I can't do whatever it is. Stop, cancel. I can do whatever it is. That's a simple one. But
I'm gonna give you one. One of the survivors said, I'm not going to hope for something wonderful to happen because it never does. And when I do hope and it doesn't happen, I'm so disappointed. So it's better for me to just not think that anything good is going to happen.
Yeah, so that's a long one. And I would, once you say that, I'd say stop, cancel.
Yep.
And I would say something like, I have great hope in my life because I know that hope drives me toward a better future, and I'm excited about that.
Brilliant. You should do that for a living.
Well, everyone should.
Yeah, true.
That's the point, is everyone should, because that's where we get into this downward spiral. And I've been there too, where you get into this downward spiral. And if you train yourself to say, stop, cancel, I don't want to be in that place. I want to thrive. And then you just pretend or make it up. And you use that beautiful creative mind. And here's the one thing I want to say around all this, because this is what I've found with all my clients. It always comes down to how worthy I think of myself. And the truth of the matter is, and that's what really needs to be programmed, is I am worthy. I am more than enough. I am loving, lovable, and loved. And you build your self-esteem. And the only person that can do it is yourself. There's an ancient Hawaiian tribe called Ho'oponopono, and they have a short prayer. Have you heard of Ho'oponopono?
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you.
The important part of it, us, the Western world, have added in the I'm sorry, please forgive me. Quite truthfully, I was trained actually with one of the descendants of the tribe, and they say it's just simple. I love you, thank you. I love you, thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. And that's all I do now. And, you could say it to someone. So I'm working with a client and they're sharing things with me. I say that to them. But actually the process is to say it to yourself, to your inner child, to your subconscious. Despite all the mistakes I might have made in life, despite all the things that have happened to me, I love you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. We think we're programmed that we're supposed to be perfect. And the truth of the matter is, no one is perfect. Maybe Jesus was perfect, but no one else was. We all have made mistakes in life, and we'll all continue to make mistakes in life. And we oftentimes beat ourselves up for making those mistakes. I like to think of them as flaws. We have flaws because we're human. But then there's this new word I'm going to teach you. And we have flaws, but we're also awesome just the way we are. So we're flawsome.
Oh my goodness.
That's really, really
I love
important
it.
to know, because when we make a mistake, whether said something or did something or whatever, we make a mistake. It needs to be just a learning opportunity. Unfortunately, we call it shame and say we made that mistake, and we think less than of ourselves because we made that. And then it can move to guilt, where we can make that mistake, we think less than ourselves, and we think we deserve to be punished.
Mhm. Mhm.
Shame and guilt have no place in our development toward thrival. It's simply we made a mistake. We are flawsome. What did I learn from that? What's it happening for me? And just making that choice to say, I'm flawsome, just like everyone else.
I want to ask you about this is fantastic. I can't wait for the next hour when we meet with the ladies. I hope everybody is on. Okay, so on your graph there, you have fight and flight.
Mhm.
What you don't have is the third F with it, which is freeze.
Yes.
Now, freeze is so ripe with shame.
Yeah.
So, what I hear frequently, so you and I will have our private session with sex traffic survivors, and this one is for survivors of lots of different things.
Yeah.
And some of the feedback that I hear from survivors who maybe weren't sex trafficked, but survivors of other things, well, sometimes sex traffic people too, me, when something happened and they froze and then something more happened because they didn't fight or run flight, the guilt and shame that they have, like, I deserved that, what's wrong with me, did I want it, like, why didn't I stop it? And the second part is, it wasn't that big a deal. Other people have had much bigger things happen than me. I don't deserve to feel, I shouldn't feel as bad as I feel for freezing and having this thing happen. Just all these different, all these different scenarios, a million different recipes for feeling less than and unworthy.
Yeah.
So, what are some tools as somebody is, beginning? I love that. I love you and I'm sorry. Um, that's just so. I mean, if you just looked in the mirror and just said that, 20 times, I mean, I would just break down and cry. I mean, that's a really beautiful process. Is there some other things for beginners on the journey of self-acceptance and just letting go of that monkey mind that's saying, you froze, it's your fault, you shouldn't be feeling as bad as you do, you weren't, beaten like this person was, you were only raped? Or
Mhm.
how would you
Well, there's so many different ways to do that, but I wanted to, when you're speaking, it triggered in my mind. So the zero limits version of the Ho'oponopono is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you can say them in any order. But the ancients, when they explained it to me, when you're talking to your inner child,
Mhm.
what you want to have you believe is that it is safe. Your inner child, you want to make your inner child feel so safe and so loved
Mhm.
that it releases its problems to divinity, God, a higher power, a source, the universe, whatever people believe in spiritually, because we can't oftentimes actually solve these huge issues.
Right.
And so you earlier talked about faith. People have faith or not faith in whatever they want to choose to call it. It's almost like you do have to have faith in something.
Right.
And maybe that's part of the journey. Maybe that was part of my journey, because I grew up without any kind of faith. And I came to Pepperdine University and was in a situation where all of a sudden I started exploring. And then I developed a faith. And that is part of my journey. That, you know, we all have journeys, and really this human life is just a spiritual journey. And sometimes the things that happen in our life just simply suck. I mean, it just really just does.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, where to start? I don't know the answer to that because it's so dependent on each person. It might be exploring faith. And what does that mean to you? It might be writing down the things that you don't want out of life and putting them on index cards and bashing them with a baseball bat. I went through a Hoffman process where that's
I did too.
You did?
I went
Yeah.
through Hoffman. I'm a
Yeah.
graduate.
I'm a graduate.
I was just gonna talk about Hoffman.
Yeah, and then recycling, and of course I became a facilitator of that here in Malibu too.
Did you really? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Of
Or
course.
just, you know, you could do it. I didn't like that baseball bat thing. I did not like that.
You know what? I didn't either. Everybody else was like pounding their monster, right? Their stuff. And I had empathy. I was just like, well, that person must have had something awful happen to them to do that to me.
I almost got kicked out of class because of that, because afterwards they tell you to imagine a thermometer, and they said, and what percentage did your thermometer go up about your emotions and feelings? And everyone's going around the circles 100, and I go 90, and they go, what? And I said, well, I said 90 because it was probably about 10. And then they called me out of the room and said, you're not doing this right. You got to go home. And anyway,
I have a little not a secret, but I'm going to share it with you. So in the when we did the big meditation to find our guide, you know, who is going to be with us on this week-long journey of healing some of our childhood wounds.
Yes.
So we go down, and my instructor came over and she whispers in my ear and she said, you know, what's the name of your guide? And what I heard was 2 words. I heard the wind, 2 words. And so I said, the wind. And she said, oh, Catherine, that's because, you know, your ability to connect with human beings because of your trauma, but we'll work on that. Go back down and, you know, and ask again. So everybody's sort of moving on. It's sort of like math class. I have to go back. So I go back down and I say, you know, you heard her. It was Carol. And then I heard in my mind's imagination, I heard sort of like Hogan's Heroes, you know, German or Jewish or something. It was like Mikhail, Mikhail. Okay. Don't think anything more of it. I go through the process. I go back home to Kansas, and I'm in the Unity Church of Overland Park's library bookstore, just looking before the service. And I see this book on angels, and I thought, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, somebody thought they saw Raphael behind me. I'm just looking it up, and I see Michael, and I'm like, what in the world? And I open it up. Are you ready for this? You want to hear something rad? I opened it up and it said, Archangel Michael, also known as the wind.
Oh, the wind. See, I liked when you said the wind, I go, that's really cool.
Right?
I got Zeus.
Right? I had goosebumps. I'm like, I don't have problems with intimacy. You know? But that's the thing. Whatever, you know, I think my ex-husband in AA, you know, he said his higher power smoked Lucky Strike cigarettes and chased women. Whatever, you know, whatever it is for me, having that spiritual connection with someone that I chose to believe is loving.
Yep.
My God is just it is the most important relationship in my life. Am I a Bible thumper? No. Am I a holy roller? No. Did I go through all that? Yes. I love the relationship. God is my best friend. That is who I talk to all the time. And Jesus is my way shower. He's a pretty rad dude. And you said the next adventure is the adventure of the mind. And I think that Jesus is like the supercomputer and we're still playing Atari.
Right.
You know, that I can imagine that we could go through space and time. I can imagine that we can heal ourselves and each other. And
Yeah.
now with the Dr. Joe stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, we're starting to tap into the supercomputer, and we really do have what we need within ourselves versus what I used to think during the healing process. It's out here. I've got to go to Landmark Education, and I've got to go to Codependence Anonymous, and and if I do everything right, no pressure, if I do everything right, I'll be healed and I won't be in this emotional hell of living with just severe, debilitating post-traumatic stress with an inability to take any sort of medication.
Yeah.
And what I learned is it's right in here. Everything I need is right in here. And the work that you're doing with Dr. Joe and bringing this work, you know, out, the hypnotherapy and the bringing these skill sets to people, you're just teaching us how to do our own healing, because it really is a journey. You know, the way through is within. And man, you are just teaching us that. And I'm not surprised that you became a Hoffman facilitator. Wow, so cool.
Yeah. So now, are we starting in a few minutes with another group?
We are. So it's 12:53 now, and we start with the group at 1. And so we will end this. And I'm just going to pause this in just 1 minute. I'll let you end however you want to end. And then we'll pause this, and then take a little break. And then at 1, that's when the women will start coming on.
Okay, great. And
Okay.
I'll send you the link to HMI, and really encourage anyone that wants to try it out, hypnotherapy out. It's free, it's complimentary, and it's our gift to the world, and trying to make the world a little bit better, one person at a time.
I did not know that there was only one school. I took it through a facilitator in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I had no idea that
Well,
there
there's
was
lots
one.
of schools, but this is an accredited school. So it's a 13 to 18-month program, 20 to 40 hours a week, with a, you know, like 500-hour internship. It's a very in-depth one, like getting a master's degree at a university.
I think that it should. I
It
mean,
should, yeah.
you're in somebody's mind, and
Yes.
it should be. Is
Yeah.
there anything you want to end this last minute before I press pause?
Just that each and every person, whether they believe it or not, is worthy. They are more than enough. They are flawsome. And all you have to do is develop a little gratitude.
Yeah.
And I love you, and thank you to each and every person that might watch this.
Well, I love you and I thank you.